Hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast. I am Amanda, also known as Lundberger.
And I am Martijn. You may know me as Inadequance. Today we have a special guest on. We have Michael from Niantic. Michael, welcome in. How are you
Hey,
doing?
hi, doing good. A little bit of a lost voice, so apologies if my voice cracks throughout this, but yeah, excited to be here.
Your voice is cracking just because you're so emotional that we're talking about these subjects of Pokemon Go, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I couldn't contain myself.
So, on that note, a little bit, I'm pretty sure that everyone knows who you are, but give a little brief explanation of who is Michael for those who are listening to the podcast.
Sure. Hi, my name is Michael. I'm employee at Niantic. I'm the live game director for Pokemon Go. My team sort of oversees everything from seasonal production to new Pokemon launches, avatar items, costumes, seasonal move changes and PvP. Yeah, lots of different things, but anything that you consider something that you engage with on a daily basis in Pokemon Go, essentially.
How did you get in there,
Oh, okay. Good
if I
question.
may ask?
Yeah, so I've always been a big Pokemon fan my whole life. Maybe little known secret about me is I was even into very competitive Pokemon for a while. I used to run a competitive Pokemon fan site actually for a number of years too. Um, it was always kind of a dream for me to be able to work on anything Pokemon related. Um, I feel like this is going to be a longer story than it should be, but I'll try to keep it as brief as I can. After college, I was very fortunate. I actually got a job at PlayStation out here in the Bay Area. And I was there for about 6.5 years, considered that very much a dream job for me, just working in the gaming industry. But then I saw the announcement trailer for Pokemon Go and was really, really interested in that as a game. It was kind of like a dream come true sounding game. And when I found out that the company that was making that was also in the Bay Area, yeah, I had to throw my hat in the ring. When I applied, I actually applied for a completely different role. And after interviewing there or here, the CMO was talking to me and said, hey, I know you applied for this one role. It's actually an ingress role. But based on your experience at PlayStation, where most of what I worked on was really these sort of experiential moments for PlayStation fans, he told me that Niantic really wanted to double down, triple down on live events in Pokemon Go. And so they actually wrote a completely new job description for me. And so, yeah, I mean, how do you say no to that? Yeah, I started off at Niantic at first, overseeing all of just our live events, created, Go Fest, Safari Zones, Community Days. Um, and then from there, I kind of broadened my scope to, I was first focused on a lot of the marketing side of things, and then over time broadened my scope to the product development side. So yeah, sorry, like I said, a little bit of a long story, but yeah, really happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's too long. I think I find all of that very fascinating because I think Pokemon Go is such a huge part of like all of our lives, and it's really cool to hear like someone getting into it from like all these different facets, right? Uh, let's talk a little bit about the PvP component of it. You said you
Yeah.
ran like a fan sort of site for PvP, and we
Yeah.
were just talking a little bit before we started recording. You said Machamp is your favorite Pokemon. Are you
Yep.
responsible for making it so darn good in PvP?
I wish I could take credit for that. No, one of our original game designers on Pokemon Go, who led the charge on PvP in Pokemon Go, did all of the initial like move balancing and whatnot. And so he made Machamp pretty great. And as you know, we haven't made that many changes to Machamp over the years. Just added payback to its move pool for Community Day. But yeah, it's just always been so awesome. And especially Shadow Machamp. Once if you
Right.
have like shield advantage or something, Shadow Machamp can tear through so many teams. And yeah, I love that it's also viable in all three metas, which is only a small handful of Pokemon can make that claim.
I heard you briefly mention the movesets there. This season we had a whole list of movesets. How did it come to this? Because it's the first time that we have like, I must admit I didn't count exactly how many Pokemon got a new move, but like how did it come to this?
Yeah, well, we just wrapped the Play Pokemon World Championship in August, so it felt like this was a really great time and opportunity to make as many changes as we wanted to. I know that there was some, back and forth in the community about, if these move changes were significant enough. I think that's something that would always be subject to debate. But at least from my feeling, we're seeing a lot more diversity in the metagame. Of course, there's still some staples like Medicham and Lantern, but I don't know, seeing quite a bit of variety. And for those who don't know, we're actually recording this just minutes after the Pittsburgh Championships just wrapped. I think there were like 11 unique Pokemon in the grand finals, which was really cool to see. And yeah, something that I'm also enjoying is the top flying type now is also part ground, which makes grass types a lot more viable. So even though you see something like Lantern might still be fairly strong, a lot of counters to Lantern have also gone up in viability in the metagame. So including the dominant flying type, which it used to counter. So I feel pretty good about the changes this time around. And yeah, like I said, coming after wrapping the World Championships really felt like a good moment to make as many changes as possible.
I do think that that the fall of Noctowl really changed things. Like one of my favorite Open Grey League metas before was at the time of Liu. That was when Medicham and Lickitung were super strong together, right? It was an unbreakable core. It was also the most flexible core. And while I am a man of spice, someone who likes to core break these kind of meta things, I do think it just gives the meta a lot of flexibility, right? There's sometimes Registeel on Lickitung, but that's as far as it really goes as time, as an RPS, right?
Yeah.
How do you get to the thoughts of these changes, right? What makes you decide, oh, we should nerf this Pokemon? Is it the usage of it?
Yeah, we look at a number of things. So, we definitely have usage stats on our side. But something you might not think about is we look at usage stats across different ladder ratings, essentially. So you can see what people are primarily gravitating towards in the 2,000 to 2,500 meta, to the 2,500 to 3,000, to the 3,000 plus. And we always want to balance in a way that continues to keep things fairly accessible to players, or at least maintain some Pokemon that are meta relevant, which can be accessible, and then also have some Pokemon that are sort of chase Pokemon that you can really work towards over time and reap the rewards of all of that investment.
Yeah, I can imagine like if you really nerfed Medicham hard, especially after the season when everyone sees it so viable, and then people who are maybe just starting the game are like, wait, I just got enough XL candies and now I don't even get to use this Pokemon. But yeah, I know you can't give away too much of the secret sauce of how you guys choose it all, but I just find it all very fascinating. And if you could give like maybe not a tip or maybe some advice to someone who is starting PvP, what are some Pokemon that you would suggest that people start with in this realm, since you are looking at all the different ladders?
Yeah, great question. Actually, the advice I would give is to try to link up with your local community, and especially people who've been playing for a while. I know one of the most difficult things for newer players to get a hold of, like, yes, it's the resources, which take a lot of time, but sometimes it's also the exclusive moves, right? The Hydro Cannon on Swampert, the Blast Burn on Charizard. But for those things, for many players who've been playing for a while, they might have quite a few extra that they'd be willing to trade you. And so if there's something that's not in rotation, if there's something that you don't have the elite CM to clear, usually a lot of like local players will be willing to lend a hand and trade something over. That being said, in terms of accessible Pokemon that are quite viable, Swampert is always the one that I think of. I think it's just incredibly strong, especially the Shadow version. You would have to wait for a Team Go Rocket event to remove frustration off of it, but Shadow Swampert will be a meta staple, I think, pretty much for forever. Lantern is still incredibly viable Pokemon, even though we nerfed it. Still very, very strong. Gligar right now is tip top of the meta, and also a fairly easy one to get the resources to power up and use. Let's see, what else would I recommend here? Honestly, the starter Pokemon with their exclusive moves are really great because they don't take a lot of Stardust or a lot of candy to power up. So, again, I definitely encourage people to try to find their local communities and trade for those exclusive moves. And as you're starting out, the other thing I would say is, don't get too caught up on the IVs at first. I think it's actually more important to get a feel for things. And especially at lower ranks, the IVs aren't as critical. So I think it's more important to get yourself like a starting team, understand, how the flow of a battle can go. And you can always build a second, Swampert or Venusaur or what have you. So yeah, that's kind of what I would say there.
Now that you mentioned that this is right after Pittsburgh, I think I also heard that at Pittsburgh there are also like unique spawns and unique special research, right, for specific beef people. I believe it's Accent's full Worlds team you can get out of research. Is that also the thought behind that, to give newer players more accessibility to those kind of Pokemon?
Yeah, definitely. It's Accent's team had the benefit of not actually having any like legendary Pokemon or mythicals or anything like that in it. So it was something that we felt pretty comfortable being able to create a research in honor of his championship run. Of course, some of the Pokemon in there are no longer as strong as they used to be, right? Like Noctowl and whatnot. But Medicham, of course, is still very strong. But yeah, so it was more like a nod to that than anything else. The spawns themselves are intended to give players a little bit of a, leg up on early competition, right? So you can go there and catch a bunch of Wooloo to get a good double, which is really strong in both Great League and Ultra League. And we also have increased Stardust rewards for catching Pokemon, which I know Stardust can sometimes be some of the most challenging resources to accumulate as you're getting started in the game. So yeah, I highly encourage players, if you're if you live nearby a regionals or something coming up, try to head out over there, even if you're not going to compete. Watch as a spectator. You'll be able to get to know a lot of great competitors out there who could potentially mentor you or tutor you. And you can catch a lot of great Pokemon and get a lot of Stardust, which will help you towards your, getting your foot in the door in PvP.
Yeah, and if you go to a European one, you can even see famous content creator Inadequance, potentially. You could even play against him, who knows?
That's true. That's probably the biggest selling point,
Yes. So these bonuses, are these going to be at every regional, like around the world, in LATAM and Europe as well?
That's the intent. Yep, definitely. So it might be something that feels a little bit stale after time for folks who go to multiple regionals and whatnot, but the goal is to provide a really good opportunity for newer players and especially when you go to these tournaments, it's not just Pokemon Go players, right? You have TCG fans, you have VGC players. And something that I've heard quite a bit from these events is a lot of those players find themselves interested in Pokemon Go after watching the battles on stream. And for them to easily, log in and start catching Pokemon and potentially building a team is something we really wanted to be able to provide.
I mean, you say that this is stale, but and no offense to last season, but I would take this over the monkeys.
The shiny hunters may not.
Any day.
We'll see how you feel in August of next year. You can let me know if you still feel the same way. But, I hope people do understand, too, that we are trying to build things in a scalable way over here. And so, yeah, hopefully we've created something that will continue to be exciting and worthwhile over time. And yeah, it's always a little bit tricky too, because sometimes there's a global event taking place, on the same weekend as a regional, and you never want to feel like you're making a trade-off of like, oh, I'm missing out on this awesome global experience by coming to the regional. So we're really trying to balance that as best as we can.
So
Yeah.
is that like scheduled with the Play Pokemon events as well? Like when you plan community days, and last time I think we had Hoenn line up with the Bochum and Knoxville regional. Is that all scheduled beforehand as well? Is there like a thought behind that?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is just the sheer number of regionals and ICs that there are through the Play Pokemon series. If we try to avoid all of those, then there would be pretty much no weekend events in Pokemon Go, right? So what we've tried to do instead is coordinate with the Play Pokemon team so that we both know when each other's events are happening. And we really try to beef up the convention centers that the regionals and ICs take place at, so that even players who are there and competing can reap the benefits of those events. So yeah, a little bit impossible to avoid, unfortunately, but hopefully we've done a good job over time, especially making those experiences more synergistic.
How far out in advance do you plan events? Like, are the community days planned out like really through the rest of the year? Do you do it just a couple months at a time, or is it really at the beginning of the year, just like, okay, guys, this is it for the entire time?
Oh, that's a great question. We take a seasonal planning approach on my team, and that entire planning from pre-production all the way to when the season finishes is about 10 months. So it is quite a long lead time, but there's a lot that goes into the development of Go. So yeah, I do think that's something that players might not fully grok or understand. They might think that like, oh, Niantic's reacting to this or that, but the truth of the matter is a lot of these plans have been set in stone many, many months before you ever even see an announcement about them. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
So,
And where can we get this list?
Let me point you to some open recs at Niantic, and maybe you can get the inside scoop that way.
So with more community days and more movesets, we kind of also need more charge TMs. That's been a bit of a hot topic at the moment. Like, have you ever needed to TM your Snorlax? That you run out pretty quickly if you in some formats.
No, I mean I just had to go through. I don't even remember how many. I think it was over 60 for my Mew.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I did the same. Yeah,
We've been there.
So I definitely know the pain point and challenge there. But honestly, what I would say to that is TMs are one of the few items in Pokemon Go that you can actually have a targeted grind for. If you take on the Tier 3 raids as an example, or a great source of them. Definitely understand that it can be incredibly frustrating, especially if you have like an unlucky streak or what have you. But yeah, I don't know. I think if you're really like seeking them out, you have a path to get them in Pokemon Go. Especially for me, after recently just wrapping up the Global Go Fest, I got a really nice glut of TMs coming from that, because I was, rating for Rayquaza and whatnot so much. So yeah, the hope there is that we've created a little bit of a closed ecosystem within GBL itself, because you can get TMs as rewards from the rewards track through playing GBL. And if that's not enough for players, then we want to be able to give you like a way to direct your attention to grind for them. I will also say the TM challenge is really funny, because it just depends on who you're talking to and who you're asking. So folks who especially play a lot more like grassroots tournaments, as an example, are building a lot more different Pokemon for condensed metas and whatnot. So I do think that, this community in particular can find themselves a little bit pinched on the TMs front. But if you talk to other players who maybe are only playing like the GBL metas or only focused on rating or what have you, I know a lot of them are actually like deleting their TMs. So yeah, it's kind of I don't know, Pokemon Go is always really interesting in that way, because you have to balance for both the, all different types of players, essentially.
Yeah, I was actually just going to bring up that point, because it's such a multifaceted game that, I mean, we have people who are just shiny hunting, and we have people who really care and are only, grinding for dust because they need to build Pokemon for PvP. I have a local who we're lucky friends, and so I was like, "Oh, do you have any Pachirisu from the Global Go Fest?" He said, "No, I deleted them all," and I was like. I was like, they're so valuable. He's like, no, I just needed it for the decks. And I was like, oh, that's insane to me. How do you guys go about balancing? And it's one of those things, you can't make everyone happy 100% of the time. And I think PvP is starting to feel a little bit more of the love. But
Good,
yeah, what is that balance, and how do you reach it well?
Yeah, I do think it really starts from we at Niantic have a really diverse player base, right? So the folks who are building these different experiences have a lot of unique viewpoints on things, and that helps us really gut check ourselves, right? If we put together a live op spec and I'm reviewing it, I'm like, whoa, there's like nothing here for PvP players to be interested in. Then we might adjust it slightly, to sweeten the deal a little bit there. But we also take a pretty long-term view of these types of things too. We know that not every event is going to satisfy every type of player, and that's okay. Some events will be a lot more appealing to the shiny hunters that you mentioned, while other events might be a lot more appealing to folks who are like really hardcore into rating, and then others will appeal to PvP players. Yeah, like you just mentioned, Pachirisu, I feel like is the perfect example, because that might appeal to just the Dex completionists, but they don't care about the XL candies or trying to get the hundos like you might for PvP. So yeah, it is really tough, but we also try to take the long view and make sure that over time there's something for everybody, but not every event has to have something for everybody either.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about your local community for PvP Pokemons earlier.
Mm-hmm.
How do you see local tournaments develop over time? I think that's being a bit of a hot topic on Play Pokemon right now, right? I think in the United States it's possible to, I believe for a Pokemon professor to host a tournament at Game Shop or something. I'm not too familiar. We don't have them here in Europe yet. But how do you see that develop?
That to me is actually the biggest growth opportunity in the PvP space personally. I think the Play Pokemon team has done a phenomenal job when it comes to all the like regionals and ICs and WCS and whatnot. But ultimately you can only facilitate that for so many players, right? There's a venue capacity, there's a travel capacity in terms of who can actually, afford to go to the different ones. And so from my POV, the most important thing to focus on in this season and moving forward are those local tournaments and making those more readily available, not just in the US, but globally. So we're working really hard with our partners at the Pokemon Company to expand on this and make this possible. And we know that it's not just something that the Play Pokemon team needs to focus on. Like, we are very much interested in supporting and, like, you know, making those experiences as attractive and memorable as possible to players. So nothing specific to announce on that front yet, but what I will say is, you know, keep your eyes open, because this is an area that's very near and dear to me personally, and something that, you know, we've really been hammering on to try to expand upon. Because the ultimate goal for me is, I would love for those local tournaments to be sort of at the top of the funnel, right, for competitive Pokemon Go, where you as a casual player might show up to one of these because it takes place on the same day as Community Day, and you're already out playing with your friends anyway, so you might go and check it out. And then once you get there, you are now introduced to other people who are super passionate about PvP, who can help you, who can, you know, show you the ropes, maybe trade some viable Pokemon to you, as we just discussed, and, you know, grow the community that way. Because as exciting as the regionals and ICs and WCS are to watch, I don't think they are as effective at, you know, growing the broader PvP player base as local tournaments can be.
Yeah, or even like at the Go Fest and stuff, you know, they have the PvP battle arena, and
Right.
in the past like couple of years, I've really liked that there's like someone there that is teaching new people,
Right.
and especially like children. You see, like children are showing what they've caught, and like
Yeah.
the people are trying to help them figure out stuff. It's like, yeah, I almost got beat by a muddy water swampert. Was not expecting it.
Yeah, you know, sometimes it's the surprise picks that'll get you. But yeah, exactly that. I think PvP especially is something where we've tried to build it in a way that's you know, easy to play but difficult to master, right? I think anybody can hop in and like tap on their phone and feel like they're, you know, battling effectively. But once you actually, you know, double click on things, you'll find that there's so much more depth to Pokemon Go PvP. But I do think that it's a lot easier to attain that mastery if you have friends in your local community that you can talk to about it and learn from. So yeah,
100%.
I think that's something I would love to see personally. In my region, there's not a lot of there's one regional tournament in my country, like
right.
a year. At least I hope, right? At least I hope. And that's basically where you meet a lot of the Dutch community. But other than that, we don't really have PvP events where you really meet up for them. So that's something I would love to see. That they, you know, there will be like maybe a monthly or 2 monthly the local tournaments hosted, and, you know, more of the Dutch community meet up. So and I'm sure that's like for other countries as well, right? For the United States.
I mean, at least you have a regional. We would love to have one in Belgium.
Belgium is you know my opinion of
it's
that.
so much better. It's so much better.
I've never been to Belgium.
Come on over, Michael. We can do a comparison.
If you host a Go Fest there, you have a reason to go.
Good point. True, good point. Yeah, let's keep talking.
There you go.
Yeah, I think the challenge on that front is threefold, right? Like, number one, we need to incentivize these local mom and pop shops around the world to actually host this. So we need to provide them an offering that they can then expand out to players to attract them to come check it out. Number two, we need to also incentivize players to go. So that means, you know, creating some type of in-game incentive, whether it's PvP focused or not, to get players to go and attend these once the hosts are actually hosting them. And the third is a challenge of marketing, right? Like, how do you effectively broaden the message that this is happening when a lot of these are kind of like one-off experiences that happen at local mom and pop shops at different days, different times. all around the world. So those are all things that we're working really closely on, and yeah, I'm hoping that we'll see some really great movement on this front throughout the course of this season.
Those are also good points that I think you bring into, and just to bring it back a little bit, we were talking about choosing the GoFest locations. I know that
Yeah.
also is a marketing thing, right? There's a lot of things that go into deciding where these locations are. And I know you have a 10-month plan. Does this also fit into your 10 months plans? Like, do you know how far in advance are you deciding where the different GoFests are going to be, the different safari zones, these type of things?
Yeah, those actually take even longer for us to put together. Whereas all the in-game stuff, obviously, we have full control over that. And so that 10-month runway is, leveraging our own internal resources. When it comes to something like a Go Fest or a major safari zone or a Go Tour, we usually have about a 1 year
Okay.
turnaround. Now, that doesn't mean that things are fully locked 1 year in advance, but the planning essentially starts 1 year before we plan to host any of these, and that includes doing venue checks, coordination with local governments in different cities, getting partnerships in place with cell providers to ensure that there's ample network connectivity
Sure.
at these sites, working with our game designers to ideate on like a fantastic experience that hopefully does something a little bit new and interesting for players every single year. It's incredibly complex, and it touches on so many different stakeholders, both internal and external, that GoFest is typically a 1 year endeavor. And then when you consider the fact that we're to 3 locations around the year plus the global one, it's quite a lot to juggle.
With the Osaka one being so close to Worlds, obviously,
Mhm.
was that sort of planned in tandem? Because
That one was,
I mean, Hawaii seems like it'd be like a pretty strange place to have a global Go Fest because it's pretty difficult to get to. But I'm not ruling it out. If
yeah. Well, nothing to share on that front, but we did know in advance the date and location for the Yokohama WCS, and so we really wanted to, knowing that we wanted to bring a Go Fest to Japan again, we wanted to see what we can do to make that potentially one big like Pokemon themed vacation for fans who are interested. So I was so happy that we were able to pull that off. And I have a lot of friends personally who took advantage of that. And I saw a lot of posts on social from players who went to Japan for the first time ever and had their experience bookended by these two incredible Pokemon experiences.
Yeah, it sounds like you're just describing me there.
Yeah, it was so cool. It was so cool to see so many people out there for that. And I know that was like a dream come true vacation for a lot of players.
Japan is like out of this world for Pokemon. It's like you think you see big Pokemon fans other places, but especially Yokohama. And I don't know if it was just because of Worlds or if they're always like this much, but it's like screens in the mall, big like figures on the streets, and the drone show. I was like, dang, this place is cool.
Yeah. It was definitely a little juiced up for WCS and the Pokemon Week that preceded it. But what's really cool about Yokohama is the Pokemon Company, has hosted annual events there for many years, and so they have really great contacts with all the movements and whatnot. So they're able to really take over that entire city. And there's really nothing like it. It's so fun to be a part of.
Yeah, I felt like going into Japan for Pokemon. I think like the Japanese community obviously also was super excited that for the first time ever the World Championships was there, right? So it exactly met my expectations, honestly. That country just breathes it as well, right? Speaking of Go Fest or in-person events, the next Safari Zones actually don't have a park, right? And don't get me wrong, I actually love it because the Go Fest, right, that we had in Osaka, also had like a city experience.
Yes.
I loved it, especially because apparently summer in Japan in August is very hard to bear at times. So it was
Yeah,
nice
it's
to
pretty rough.
it
Yeah.
was nice to play in like an air conditioned mall at times, right? But how come that this time we don't have any park for the Safari Zones?
Yeah, so that one, so these technically are not Safari Zones, actually. I know that the branding is a little nuanced and could be confusing, but it's actually a brand new event archetype that we're launching called City Safaris. And the intent there is to find a more scalable solution to our live event experiences that lean a bit more heavily on the digital side, but also encourage players to explore a full city rather than explore a park within a city. Yeah, so the spec and the gameplay that you'll experience at a city safari is a little bit, or a lot of it, different than what you might expect at a safari zone. So I'm excited to see how players respond to that. If things go well, that's something that we'll be able to offer in many cities around the world over time. But safari zones, as we've grown to know and love, also aren't going away. We're still going to be hosting safari zones in the future, but at least as of right now, we wanted to try our hand at this new type of experience that leaned a little bit more on exploration of a full city, particularly because the city part of the experience from Go Fest and Go Tour was so well received by players. We wanted to try to lean into that a little bit more.
I have one question, and we can cut it if you don't want to talk about it at all.
Sure.
But how do people give you feedback or give Niantic feedback in a way that it can be implemented, or are you guys implementing feedback that people are giving?
Yeah. So after any major IRL experience, we do send out post-event surveys to players. So, check your email for those. We look really closely at the responses there. And there's a lot of both quantitative feedback that comes from that, but also qualitative ones too. So, I think there are some like open text type of answers that you can provide. So we really do look at those. We also send out in-app surveys from time to time as well, just to get sort of like a pulse check on how players are feeling about things. And of course, we do read, things that people say on social media, whether that's, Twitter or Reddit or, different Discord servers or Facebook. But yeah, we're definitely reading feedback all the time. I think what's most important to us is making sure that we're getting a breadth of feedback from all different types of players, right? As we were talking about earlier, one of the cool things about Pokemon Go is it's played by so many different types of players who, enjoy different parts of the game. And we want to make sure that we're not just listening to a small subset of players and that we're just like super serving that subset. We want to make sure that we're like pulling in feedback from a really broad range of people. And I guess the one I didn't mention that we also do is we do a lot of user research, whether that's while we're building new features or while we're testing different events and whatnot. And so, you might not hear about that very often because you do have to sign an NDA to participate in that, but we are collecting direct feedback through that user research as well.
Just talking about that, how do you come up with the theme of every season? And is that also planned ahead, like
yes,
some events are?
Yeah. That's all part of the seasonal production that I had mentioned, where it's like a 10-month cycle. So typically, where we'll start is we'll want to look at what's happening in the real world. Right? Are there any major events or holidays that we want to lean into? And that will give us a starting point on what kind of events we want to host in the game. Then as we look at the different events that we're putting together, we try to layer in some type of like a theme or a brand for that season. As you've seen over the course of many seasons that we've hosted, sometimes that can be a little more like generic or, about going out and adventuring and things like that. But other times it's very specific. And so, yeah, we hope that every season feels kind of like unique and interesting in its own way. And we're only going to be able to get better and better at that over time.
We have one last question, but it's a two-parter.
Actually, I
Okay.
have one more question.
Oh, okay.
So this is one I added later to it. I saw the Shadow Raids teaser earlier on the Pittsburgh stream, right? And I heard the Lugia's cry, right? And one thing that I personally have been hoping to see, as someone who's been playing Pokemon since his childhood, do we get to see the Gale of Darkness Shadow Lugia at some point? It's like the Dark Purple one, right?
Yeah, I know, it's so epic. Honestly, that's something that I wish that I could say yes, we will bring that in Pokemon Go. But things like that are unique to the games that they originate in, and it's very rare for brand pillars to cross like that within the Pokemon universe. The other one that I would just die if we could bring to Pokemon Go is that like Shadow Mewtwo from Pokken Tournament. I don't know if you've seen that one.
Yep,
That's man, a cool one. That looks so cool, and I would love to bring that into Pokemon Go. But yeah, definitely challenges to be had to make that happen. Obviously, those are characters that were developed by the teams that built those games, and so instead, something that I hope that we can do in Pokemon Go is maybe build our own unique, really cool versions of beloved Pokemon over time.
All right. Now can I ask it more time?
You have my permission.
Okay. So it's a kind of a staple question that we have on the Stadium Cast, and it's a two-parter. It is, who do you think in the PvP community would you classify as a Crabrawler? And this is someone who is, maybe is starting out PvP or is like just not super well known, but you think that they have a lot of potential. And then who is your favorite Pokemon? A champion, someone that you think, yes, they are going to go far. They probably could win Worlds, this next season.
Yeah. I'll start with the Machampion one. So I just continue to be super impressed by Wadaj, like one of the most consistent players we've ever seen. He literally just won the Pittsburgh Regional an hour ago from this recording. So yeah, I would put him on my Machampion list. Obviously, like Axon, I think could very likely be a two-peater on WCS. That would be incredible to see. But yeah, I think we've just seen Wadaj just continue to improve over time, and he already started from such a strong place. And that's not just his gameplay either. Like I feel like maturity-wise as well, he's really grown up through his experience with the Play Pokemon tournament. So yeah, I'm curious to continue to watch him grow and evolve. And then for Crabrawler, yeah, I feel like I have to give a shout out to one of my personal close friends in the PvP community who maybe isn't as well known as content creators or whatnot, but is incredibly consistent and is always toppling the leaderboard and does pretty well whenever he does attend a regional, which is Chem Coop. Really strong. I know he'll be attending some regionals this year, so fingers crossed. I'm always rooting for him. He's a close friend of mine. I think he eliminated Martine.
Yeah,
actually.
He did at NAIC 2022. He beat me. He's a really cool guy.
Yeah, he's really strong and probably not as well known as his skill might dictate.
All right. I've already asked you this before. I'm going to ask it again. When are we going to see you compete? You had Legend before. You're pretty good at. I mean, you also beat me the last two games. When are we going to see you? You're pretty good too.
Yeah, I am a very competitive person. I'd love nothing more to compete. I always joke that someday I'm going to quit my job at Niantic just so I can enter these tournaments. But yeah, unfortunately, a little bit of a conflict of interest. I'm not allowed to
that
compete.
Makes sense.
You can't be slapping all of us on screen.
Exactly. I'm just trying to do you all a favor. But no, I'd love to, hop on and maybe do some exhibition games or whatever. That's always fun. I was invited to do an exhibition match at the
I
PJCS
saw
last
that.
year.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm always open to doing things like that, but unfortunately, I can't officially compete.
Fair.
Well, we'll be in touch. Maybe we can get you in to do some exhibition matches in EU.
That'd be great. That'd be so fun.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you
What's
so
the-
much,
yeah.
Michael, for your time, for coming on.
Yeah, and for your honest answers, and like I'm sure a lot of the community is like really like will find this very informative and also relatable as well.
Great. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. I'm always happy to hop on and chat, and big fan of both of you. So yeah, when you reached out, I was like, yeah, absolutely, I would love to talk to you. And I think I mentioned this off of the podcast as we were getting set up, but you caught me like at the perfect time. I literally just closed out my last day before my bigger chunk of parental leave. I took like a short leave when my baby was first born, but yeah, I'm gonna be a full-time dad for the next 3 months essentially. So
That's awesome.
I'll be
Congratulations.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll be enjoying Pokemon Go on the sidelines as a fan, and yeah, you might see me more in GBL because of that.
Oh, bring it on. All right,
Cool.
thank you so much. Yeah, so that was our episode with Michael. Thank you for listening, and again, Michael, thank you for coming on. We will see you next week in the next episode.
Bye.
Awesome. Have a good one.